Hello, free money family. Sloane here, and I bet you were starting to get a little bit worried about us. Is that the case? Never to fear, never to worry. We're back with another episode. Due to a very characteristic technical issue, there's no guest this week. It's sort of the all banter episode, and we were able to salvage most of the episode, and there are only a few parts of it that don't make any sense at all. So, just to give you a bit of quick context on that, in case you come across something that's confusing, our guest in this episode was actually my co-founder at a company called Woodcash that I've been building over the last couple of months. It is a carbon removal project developer using this really cool, novel process called biomass burial, where we basically take waste wood, which is about half carbon by weight, take it out of forests where it could, kind of exacerbate forest fires, and bury it in specially designed pits in the ground that allow us to ensure that the carbon embodied in the wood stays sequestered for 100 years, really much more likely thousands of years. So it's very cool. And there's some references to that at the end of this episode that hopefully make sense now. But other than that, I give you a fantastic episode full of banter, news, tips of both the garden and non-garden variety, and the occasional jokes, some of which I'm told are even funny. So I look forward to sharing more episodes with you over the coming weeks. Please accept this as a not so subtle invitation to send your questions, comments, thoughts, musings, rants, and let's keep the invectives to ourselves. But everything else, any other thoughts that you may have, please pass them along. And the other thing I'll just mention is that due to the recording glitches that we experienced, Ashby and I don't say we love you at the end of this episode like we do usually. And I just want you to know that we love you very much. Bye. Enjoy the episode. Take it away, Sharkbait.
Ahoy, Free Money Podcast listeners! I'm Sharkbait Buckley, the Disclosure Pirate, and I'm here to set ye straight about what's going on with this here show. Sloane Ortel works for Invest Vegan LLC, a New York registered investment advisor. Ashby Monk works for Stanford University, Adapar, Future Proof, Long Game, and various startups. All opinions expressed by either Sloane or Ashby are entirely their own, and do not reflect the opinions of their crew or any company. Clients who Invest Vegan may maintain positions in securities and strategies discussed in this podcast. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Invest Vegan and its representatives are properly licensed or exempted, and a client agreement has been executed. Arr!
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Dollar, dollar.
Welcome to the Free Monkey Podcast. Free Money Podcast? Free Monkey Podcast? I don't know. I mean,
I think you can get monkeys for free now that NFTs are worthless.
that's a great point. That
I would Free Monkey Podcast. I bet you there's a lot of NFTs that nobody they're holding it at book value of $5,000, but the true value is zero.
The true value is infinite, Ashby. I mean, it's because it's really, it's left to the reader as an exercise what these things could be worth.
That's right.
There's some really funny like NFT bankruptcy stories that have happened recently where people are like, I really expected a lot more positivity out of the Bored Ape community.
I can't laugh at all you Bored Apers.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is sort of hilarious. That's where we are.
Yeah, you hate to see idiots losing money en masse. I mean, it really.
Yeah, but it's been a while, Sloane. I was looking. I don't think we've recorded anything in 6 months, and I think part of it is we were just making so much money off the royalties. We didn't.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I was sitting on my big pile of money out here. I moved to Utah.
Whoa.
Which is news to some listeners.
You're no longer...
Well, it's my own version of a Lifetime movie.
That's amazing.
Overworked professional woman moves to Provo, Utah, learns the meaning of community. I haven't met like a sexy carpenter and skis. Yeah.
By the way, when I tap this, does it sound like it's coming through there?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was expecting that we would already have technical glitches, given that's our, we're on a new system for the listeners. Just to keep everybody on their toes.
Yep.
We're off of the old system onto the new system, which usually means some glitches, if I'm honest.
Some growing pains. I mean, so far,
I think that's
only about 5 or 6.
That's half the reason people tune in, I think, is to hear us deal with technical challenges.
Tech Support Live, the podcast.
But I think 6 months have gone by, but I think the world still needs free money.
It does.
And so that's why we're here. We're here.
Yeah.
And by the way, there is a lot of free money. Speaking of free money tips, if you are holding cash in a savings account for the first time in maybe 10 years, you should really be exploring other places to put your money, because the spread between your savings account and U.S. Treasuries is probably 4%.
The savings account, I mean, I feel like that tip has really been making the rounds in Silicon Valley of late.
Well, there's the don't put more than the FDIC insurance max in a bank account. That's one that is not free money, but protect money.
Keep
The
money.
free money tip is basically moving money from one riskless account into another riskless account, because the cash and cash equivalent market has gone nutso with the rising interest rate environment, which means if you're just doing what you were doing 12 months ago with your oodles of cash, because we know the free money listener has so much cash because they've been listening.
Scrooge McDuck vibes, basically.
It's swimming in gold, y'all. You got to make sure that gold isn't just in the pool like it was for Scrooge. I literally have a slide deck with Scrooge McDuck swimming through the money. You know that.
I mean,
right?
you have to. I mean,
have
like
you seen
in this,
me do that presentation, or you're just dropping Scrooge McDuck out of the blue?
We're just in each other's heads, dude. That's the way it works.
This is too good. Yeah. So that was my tip. Go and see if you invest in a treasury, something like that. You'll go from 1% to 4%. And even if it's $5,000, we're talking about at the end of the year, a fancy dinner.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think it really has been I mean, I don't even remember the last time that there was an observable interest rate on cash.
Yeah.
I think it was like the first year of my investment career in like 2007.
That's right.
We had it for a minute.
Yeah, then the financial crisis was like,
nope, psych.
We're going below zero interest rate, basically, because we're going to throw money at helicopters.
Yep, yeah. Like, it's like, hey, how would you like to come up with a new theoretical framework for what an interest rate is when it's negative? Like, it was a really fun time for applied economists. Yeah,
it was fun, and we all thought we were so good at investing when money was free. Okay, news, Sloane, because so much news has happened since we talked. Such as, do you realize? I don't know if we've gotten to comment on the complete explosion of crypto. We already started.
Yep.
Right on the show. First thing was our Free Monkey podcast.
Yep.
But there's been quite an explosion for the listeners who aren't really with their finger on the pulse of crypto. And as evidence of that, today the Canada Ontario Teachers Pension Plan has announced they will be steering clear of the crypto sector. Now, for those that aren't aware, OTPP lost $95 million on FTX. And because they are quite a sophisticated plan, they held that position on a direct basis. So, the newspapers could quickly identify an Ontario teacher-based pension plan losing all that money.
Yep.
Now, to give them a lot of credit, I think there's probably 50 other pension funds that lost more than $5 million. But they just happen to be sitting inside of a vehicle that obscures our ability to spot all these other pension plans. So, but Ontario Teachers says no more crypto kitties.
I mean, it's really, and I thought they were long-term investors here, interested in building the ecosystem of frauds and scams.
I agree. Yeah. This is a thriving industry of fraudulent behavior. Oh my God, I love this. All right, next one. Speaking of cash, I've got cash-related news, Sloane. The Future Fund is now holding less cash. They had been hoarding cash because of the volatility. Here's the line. Future Fund's cash holdings fell to 10.6% in the first quarter from 11.8% a quarter earlier. First of all,
a lot of cash.
that is a massive cash holding.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like, I mean, I think the accounts I manage are usually below 1% in cash.
Yeah. That's because you're trying to avoid cash drag. Like cash drag is a known thing, especially when you don't have high interest rates in cash markets. But Future Fund was holding all that cash just because of the volatility. It's great to have cash when markets are collapsing. You invested in the assets that are collapsing.
Yeah, it functions like an option. I mean, and people really do kind of think like, okay, well, like, I mean, there is a school of investing that's like, oh yeah, holding all this cash is basically a free call option on future volatile situations.
Yes.
Is that their rationale, or are they just going like?
It is their rationale. That money almost entirely has been moved into developed market equities.
Interesting.
So they're sort of, in my mind, potentially calling bottom on that, or at least beginning the averaging into those markets. So the developed market equities component of their portfolio rose to 17% from 15.9%. It's also interesting to note that they have cut back their allocation to private equity, dropped it 0.5%, which in a high interest rate environment is rather astute, because a lot of the performance in private equity people often attributed to free money.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, does bear mentioning that private equity, it used to be called leveraged finance or leveraged buyouts.
That's true. Leveraged buyouts, LBOs, we called it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you would be like, are you doing venture capital or LBOs? And they were
a real archaic term for it is bootstrap finance, which is like, the kind of like 1960s term for it.
My gosh. I'm going to have to go reread Barbarians at the Gate.
Oh, man. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a real classic page turner, a swashbuckling tale. But a reminder that basically in a PE deal, you're usually putting down like 1 unit of equity and like getting 9 units of debt from some kind of friendly banker.
Yeah. Amazing. Third piece of news is Stanford University. Some may have heard of it, has launched a new course this quarter on pension funds and sovereign wealth funds. And what I find most interesting about this new course is that I'm teaching it.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, I thought you were going to say that you're not teaching it.
I am teaching it. It's my class. And we got 40 students in there learning all about pension funds and sovereign wealth funds and how they make decisions. And Sloane, you'll be happy to hear, I didn't make it required, but I said it was optional to listen to the back catalog of the Free Money podcast.
That's smart. That's smart. It's funny, actually. I've started doing, we just made our first hire at Invest Vegan, which means that I have a training program now. And I sort of have open sourced my training program for like other, kind of radical and lefty finance entities. And quite similarly, you'll be shocked to know where the homework assignments are coming from.
Oh, yeah.
The Free Money Podcast.
I think mostly I did it because I wanted to be able to say our podcast was on a Stanford University syllabus.
I mean, it was going to happen one time or another. Yep. I mean, it's already on the Yale and Harvard syllabuses, so it's
syllabi? About time. I'm not sure what the plural of bus is. It syllabi?
Syllabisms?
Syllabinews. I don't know what I'm doing. So that's my last bit of news, but it's been a blast. I have to say, it's been a blast to take these 40 Stanford students through our world because, nobody knows about our world.
It's so weird. It's so weird. Like, And it's just like, I mean, there's like a 24-hour news channel dedicated to like the least relevant actors in the finance world. And then, like this group of, long-term investors that controls zillions in assets, might show up, but they have to be in that short-term news context. They can't have, they don't get the conversation that they're owed,
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And we're doing some interesting homework assignments, and some of the students I tend to realize partway through are smarter than me.
Yep.
So a lot of times when they ask tough questions, I'm like, that's a good question. Now, does anybody else think they can answer it? How about you? So you kind of get real good at redirecting questions, Sloane. That's the key.
I think that's called the case method.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we could invent a methodology for when you don't actually know the answer. Fabulous question. Well, rather than me just stealing the thunder, let me just turn it over. What do these students think here?
Yeah, well, why don't we think about this? Why don't we sort of, reason through this in a group and work on our collaborative problem-solving skills?
Exactamente.
Yeah, you're not just teaching people academics, you're training them for the real world.
Beautiful.
It's time for hard things, Ashby. Like, what's anything been hard for you lately?
So, I mean, literally, as we were on this podcast, I was dealing with hard things. I hope it didn't come through as different people were trying to get at me. Look, the hard thing today, which I'm writing on the fly here, is like, it's so hard to thank all the people you need to thank when you build something big, because, without getting into it, because I don't want anybody to get fussy with me, but when you build something, you're going to have many different people involved, and when you have a success, you want an opportunity to thank people. And I set out to thank a bunch of people yesterday, and I forgot to thank 2 people, and they are sad that I forgot to thank them, and I feel terrible about that. And I'm sitting here stewing. Like, literally, it's affecting my day that I forgot to say that these 2 individuals had contributed something significant. And God, it eats me up. And so that's hard. It's like, you just want to make sure the people that have helped you get there feel honored, because, none of this stuff you can do alone. I don't do anything alone at this point. I do it. I'm the cheerleader, So anyway, that's hard. How about you?
That's a really interesting, so I'm sort of dealing with this point in my evolution as, I guess, a manager and an entrepreneur, where for a long time I would be kind of gutting everything out by myself. Like Invest Vegan until like literally earlier this month was just me.
Right.
And now it's me and Gabe, who's just joined us.
Sweet.
And Woodcash, 5-6 months ago was just me and Serge, and now it's like me and Serge and Mark and Wid and Marco and a whole bunch of people. And so what happens really quickly in that kind of evolution is that you go from being, the person that everything is on, to being kind of like the repository of information that people need, and kind of being in many ways a blocker, right? Like where 2 people might be working on something and they need something that's in my inbox, and I haven't set up my life so that they get it automatically yet. So I'm really like having a lot of fun, but also a lot of growing pains, thinking about, okay, so how do I, make sure that everyone has the full context that they need, and how do I just like release myself from having to take every action myself?
And be prepared for the feedback that's about to hit you. Like, you're going to get feedback. I think that's the other thing that people don't realize when you build new stuff, whether you're building a new course or you're building a company or a fund. Like, my God, you just need thick skin.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so weird. Especially with Woodcash, because we've been pitching in Utah, right? To a relatively less woke VC environment you might expect than you might expect in Silicon Valley or New York.
Yeah.
And I'm a gender nonconforming trans woman, right?
So nuts. Yeah.
And so you never all the way know what the hell is going on. And by the way, usually it's me giving the pitch, so it was kind of fun to force Serge to do it.
It's hilarious. That is wild.
But yeah, Yeah, it's just it's it's a growth experience and it's a wonderful time, but it's really interesting.
Amazing. Well, good luck with all that stuff. I'm really excited you guys are doing the wood cache. It is exciting.
Yeah.
I looked through the deck and was kind of blown away at the sophistication and it is an issue that so many people are thinking about, and you have a novel solution. So, congrats.
We'll see how far that gets us, but I mean, we have a very
Oh, I was waiting for that.
Oh, is it doing the thing again?
Yeah, please. I mean, you can hit it a third time.
Just keep playing it, baby. Yeah.
What do we got?
So this is one I've been really looking forward to asking you, because during the unraveling of FTX,
Yeah.
there was this big kind of think piece or kind of energy in the effective altruism community and the broader long-termism community about Sam Bankman-Fried and his involvement in a lot of things that you and I kind of think a lot about, like long-termism and stuff like that. And one of the really interesting thoughts was that long-termism is in some way a utopian worldview. And I'm curious, is that the way that you think about it?
It's a great question. First off, SBF was a con man. So even if he was pretending to be all these things, the more we learn about the way he was running that place, the more it was clear he was in part so far over his head and also a con man.
Yeah.
I had to Google utopian because I feel like I know what it is, but then I was like, let me just make sure I'm on it. And it's equal rights. It's a life without fear. It's economic security, and it's collective or government provided welfare for all. And I think my vision of long-termism and long-term investing's role in that is probably all of it minus the government provided welfare. I don't mind the government provision of welfare, Social Security, the facilitation of pensions, healthcare, but I don't think that is necessarily what the long-term investors are noodling on as they're thinking about their 50-year horizon.
Yeah.
I think they're thinking about how they meet their objectives, which is usually some government project, by the way. Most pension funds are set up either tax-free, thanks to government support, or by the government themselves.
Yep.
So the 100 trillion has this clear link into government. But I do think that when you take that long-term view as a pension investor, a sovereign fund investor, you really start to care about freedom and liberty and, integrity and what it means to live without fear. Like, to me, I guess I am a bit utopian when I start to go after it. Because why not? Shouldn't we have an ambition that's to make this place so much better?
Yeah. Yeah. And isn't the best way to derive that ambition to think about kind of a distant future where we've resolved a lot of the near-term nonsense, and you kind of have a way of judging against that once you adopt that long-term perspective.
And I would like those things to happen together in conjunction. Like if you watch this incredible movie called Wall-E. So in that case, we've destroyed the planet, but all the people are fat and they live without fear and they have economic security. I think we need to take this holistic, integrated approach to our society and how we function it, where it all needs that long-term integration, where we don't have all the externalities. Like if we're just pursuing equal rights, what could fall out of the equation? If we're just pursuing, economic security, what could fall out of the equation? And I think when you take a 50-year horizon and you start thinking about the secondary and tertiary consequences of our actions, it is actually quite a clarifying process to do that. If we just keep producing this energy in order to get everybody to, out of poverty, we're going to destroy the world. We need to balance all that out. And so that's, I think, in part what's so powerful about long-termism. And keeping con men out of our project, I think, is important to make sure it works.
It's a tough one because, like, on the one hand, like, I mean, in the kind of progressive finance community, we talk about this a fair bit, where it's like, okay, we need to be able to meet people where they are, right? But at the same time, we need to uphold some standards for the movement. And neither of those things are, objectively achievable goals, right? They're the kind of thing that you have to aspire towards continuously.
It's actually very interesting because I had a bunch of interesting conversations. I'm going to say interesting again, just because I said it twice there.
Interesting. Very interesting.
But the classic economics is this top-down approach, right? Where we're like trying to build these models that we can apply to everybody.
Yep.
And I think taking a long-term view is about actually going into the bottom and building a bottom-up perspective and saying, what are people actually feeling and doing on a day-to-day basis? And that's done through ethnographies. It's done through qualitative research and case studies. It's also being done through big data now.
Yep.
And through AI and all these interesting things are opening up new avenues of understanding context. And that context is critical. You talk about meeting people where they are. When Lindsay and I set up Long Game, we're like, we're going to help everybody save for retirement. And then you get in there and you're like, wait, everybody has credit card debt out the wazoo.
Yep.
Like we need people to pay down their credit card debt, and so you change based on the context. And I think so much of this is about understanding context. And once you have the tools for context, then I think you can develop outcomes that really are win-win, win-win-win-win.
Yeah, like the tired of winning type outcomes.
Oh my goodness. 2024. So much winning coming.
Okay.
I shouldn't have said 2024 because it's like anytime you mention that election, people just groan. Nobody's happy with what's happening in our political future.
The interesting thing though is like I mean, this is off topic, but just like as I've been paying attention to carbon and all that stuff, I actually am getting pretty optimistic about our political future.
Oh,
in part, just the Inflation Reduction Act was great, but watching the way that Daddy Biden and all of the, associated folks have kind of like, put a stick in with new EPA regulations that kind of dovetail with Inflation Reduction Act provisions and stuff like that. I do kind of get this like weird patriotic, like America's back, baby.
It's funny you say that. I have like found myself lecturing my kids about how awesome America is lately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because this place, like we got our problems. It's dysfunctional, but it's still that like beacon on the hill, we're still leading. We did the IRA, like we are pushing the boundaries. We invented crypto kitties. Yes, we did that. But there's a bunch of other good stuff that we did that aren't, frauds. And so I just love this place, I became an American when I was 18 and I don't regret it yet. I'm also not a billionaire. So, the tax thing chases you around the planet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It is fun to kind of get into the zone where you're like, all these regulations, rawr. Yeah. Anyway, next, Dear Ashby question. And this is like, I would love to see some economics papers about this. Will the failure of Silicon Valley Bank have more or less economic consequence than the nationwide Adderall shortage?
First of all, I didn't know we had an Adderall shortage.
Oh man, that's lucky for you.
Yeah, I don't consume it. Maybe I should start, but
yeah, shit's fire. I mean,
I hear people are doing it. The kids these days. Look, I think the SVB Bank thing is bigger just because that's the one I know to be big. I'm really nervous about the future of regional, community, local banks. I think this has been a bit chilling. And people are really moving banks from communities where bankers know people who are building cake shops and dry cleaners and things like this. And you're ending up with the behemoths in New York. And I don't think that's a bottom-up perspective, a contextual perspective on economic activity from our, altruism question. I just don't think that's great. So I worry about that, but yeah, I'm not quite sure what to do about it just yet. But yeah, I think local and regional banks are very important for our project. Are bringing people, raising all boats, all those kinds of things. I'm not sure that's the job of the New York-based too big to fail banks, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine those banks kind of taking the same sort of. I mean, and it's funny. I was a shareholder in Silicon Valley Bank.
Oh wow.
And our risk
and part of Invest Vegan.
Yeah, it was in the Invest Vegan portfolio. Actually, we own both. Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank at one point.
Oh wow.
But our risk controls got us out of it about 6 or 8 months before everything started going to shit.
No way.
Yeah, it's almost like this iterative risk control process, like where you look at things anew and like integrate a whole bunch of stuff, like has some like practical implications almost.
That is legit. Congratulations for being.
Thank you. I'm really proud of it. And it's fun because like I look back at like the early days of SVB, and it's like, they were banking so many climate projects. They were banking. I mean, when I made the investment, they were a legitimately woke bank in a great way. And it was not even some like direct signal of an incoming crisis that caused us to sell. It was a bunch of stuff about governance that people would find relatively obscure and not necessarily decision relevant. But being kind of shrill about that shit is what protected us from owning that stock. Anyway, next question.
Okay.
Is it a red flag if a CFO uses a MacBook?
I like this one. It probably was for a while when, because I think what the person, if you didn't write this, whoever submitted is, I think that, you know what? You're CFO, aren't you? So you're CFO this is literally like a Dear Abby question for yourself.
I don't use Macs. So,
Okay. So you're thinking people, because the Mac was almost always linked with a crappier version of Excel.
Yes.
And the life of a CFO is in Excel, or was.
Yep.
And so the idea that you would see a CFO with a MacBook was a sign that your CFO was crappy at Excel. That's the hidden underneath this question.
Yeah, like if your CFO needs a mouse to use Excel, are you in trouble? And the answer is probably yes.
The answer is probably yes. As you get to bigger companies, though, is it the CFO or is it the CFO's team? You know what I mean? Like this.
Yeah, you really
C in the title, chief.
Yeah.
The chief is in charge, and so if they have, many of them are probably just cruising with iPads, looking at the outputs of tables.
Yep.
Yep. But yeah, I will say that is a soon to be dated concept. Like you got to imagine that the versions of Excel and frankly Google Sheets are going to start to be good enough on Macs, or already are. I don't know. I use Google Sheets now. It seems fine, but
yeah, I made the jump to Google Sheets when we started when Gabe joined, because he sits in New York, and checking out Excel sheets and stuff like that was just going to not happen.
Yeah.
So
simple to share the content,
Yeah.
And you can
and you can
live
get
commenting, it's.
Yeah, it's almost. I mean, I think that 20-year-old me would be like, "What? You're not using Excel? I can't believe you." But it's important to not let the form of the thing, overtake the function that we desire from it.
Yeah, Lotus Notes is gone, and who knows? Maybe Excel will be gone too one day, and it'll be Sheets, and then maybe we'll get real software to power these analyses.
I mean, that's kind of, another place that, I mean, at Woodcash, we have to track carbon and cash expenses. And I've been really shocked at how crappy the carbon accounting modules are on like QuickBooks and other stuff like that.
Right.
So we're probably going to be stuck in our own sheets for a while. But gosh, wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to homebrew all that stuff?
It would. Yeah.
Anyway, our last and most popular segment by far is garden tip time.
And I've got one.
You got a garden tip for us?
It's not a tip you can implement without I was about to say without doing a dance. It's about rain. And I don't think we're allowed to talk about rain dances anymore.
I mean, not without a land acknowledgement.
Jesus. Yeah. So anyway, I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about rain. Holy shit. Rain is a hell of a drug for your garden.
Oh my gosh,
people. So I haven't talked to you much because we haven't been doing the pod. This was the rainiest year I've ever lived through. And I lived in Oxford. I lived in Paris. Like, it felt like it never stopped raining in California. And not the like, oh, do you need an umbrella or don't you? It's like, it doesn't matter if you have an umbrella. You're going to be drenched. Like, this is like monsoon. And I cannot believe the growth outside in my yard right now. Like, just shocking. Trees that have like shot out everywhere and blooms and we're having a super bloom.
Yeah.
I had to Google what that was when somebody's like, it's super bloom time. When you get so much rain, these wildflowers go bananas, and it's true. So I don't know how to give a tip about that, except to say, go and look at what's happening in California. Go look at the wildflowers. I had to pick so many weeds, Sloane. I mean, there were some weeds that were like that were like tree trunks. That popped up in like 4 weeks, and it was like as tall as me. Some of these things are pretty impressive.
I'm looking like money. Now make it rain on 'em.